So in my classes generally, and this is fall of 2014 when I'm making this video, but this video can apply to later classes. Generally in my classes I do not make my assignments all add up neatly to 100 points. That would be much easier for students if I did. It would facilitate a fast understanding of what is worth what. Because when things don't add up to 100 points, then things like a 2-point assignment might not be worth as much as you think. Um, so anyway, I thought let's be super transparent on how I calculate the ranges, because eventually I want to know, okay, what range of points in my weird sum of point numbers gives you an A, what range of points gives you B, C, D, and F. So basically all I'm doing here is I'm turning on the video and showing you how I calculate this. Um, so regardless of how many points you get, how many points are given in any class, you should be able to use this method to figure out where the points come from. All right, so our first step is just to figure out how many total points, what is the sum, that is, of all of the points available in the class through the assignments. I'm going to be lazy, and I'm going to do that through an Excel spreadsheet. I'll get myself a new tab open here, and I'm pasting that table into the spreadsheet. It looks really ugly, but basically what I'm going to do in a moment is I'm going to delete everything that doesn't deal with points, and I'm going to sum up the points in the points column. But I'm going to clean up this sheet very quickly while you're on pause, and then I'll come back and show you quickly how I sum it up in Excel. Okay, so I kind of cleaned it up for a second. Now I'm going to, and it looks okay. It looks like it copied over correctly from Word, because sometimes you have to be careful about that. Like if you're making an important calculation, then you have to just double check. But that, it all looks right. So now I'm going to delete some extra information in my spreadsheet. This is a lot of trouble, I know, just to get a sum, but I've found that in the past I do tend to make mistakes when I'm adding up even simple numbers, you know, using a calculator, being very careful. And so I try to use technology to help me not make those mistakes, because then I have fewer things to correct later in the class. All right, so I'm going to delete these columns. I don't need them in order to get my sum. All I need is that table of numbers there, that column of numbers. So I'm going to delete, I'm going to delete this column, column B. All right, so now I can really focus. In fact, I'm going to make these just a little smaller too. Okay. All right, so now I can really focus. I've got 25 different point-bearing assignments. Excel's really awesome. It shows us we're looking at 25 items for a sum of 216. Okay, so I know that's a sum of 216. I'm going to put you on pause while I quickly count this in my head, just to make sure, because I'm super obsessive about doing these things right, because again, I don't like to revisit this and redo it. So I'm going to pause you. I'm going to actually count this in my head just to make sure I get the same number. Then I'm going to move on to the next step. So I did just calculate it in my head, and it does indeed add up to 216. Okay, so that's the first step. We know we have a sum of 216. Now we want A, B, C, D, and F. So I'm going to open up a new Word document and set up a little thing so that this makes sense. All right, so we know we have a sum of 216. I'm going to pause you while I set up this paper, then I'm going to explain my setup, then we're going to make the calculations. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is calculate the range for a grade letter of A. That is, the question we're trying to answer here is, what is the range of points that students must earn to get an A? That is, a range would be what is the lowest number of points and what is the highest. Well, the A is the easy one because you only have to do one calculation. We already know what the highest number is to get an A. It's 216. And in my class, you know, if you get extra credit, you can sometimes get more than 216 points. That still means you've got an A. So, but in terms of the assignments in the class, 216 is the most you can earn on the assignments in the class without the extra credit. So that's the top of our range. But the bottom of our range is the part where we need to calculate. So the least amount of points you can earn for the A, what are those minimal points? Well, if you think along in the terms of what is an A, B, C, or a D on a 100 point scale, or in terms of percentages, basically around the 90% mark is what you have to get an A, right? 90%. Well, in my class, I give people the benefit of the doubt. So like, let's say you got a really high B, you got an 89.5. Well, in my class, I do round that up to an A. So that's how I do the calculation. In order to, so if you get 0.895% of 216, so you have to, in order to get an A, the least amount of points you can get is about 89.5% of that total of 216. So you basically, if you get an 89.5 in my class, you get an A. So to do the calculation, you have to multiply the total of 216 times 0.895. And let me grab my calculator. I'm not going to do this for every one. I'm not going to go in such detail. There's my calculator. All right, let's get that handy. 216 times 0.895 is equal to 193.32. 193.32. And we'll come make these numbers prettier in just a minute. We'll round them off in just a minute, but let's do all our calculations first. Actually, guys, I want to give you the satisfaction of seeing this range completed. You know, we just did the work for it, and this one's pretty clear. I don't need to round this 193 up to 194. That means that you guys can squeak by with 193 points, even though, according to, if we're really precise, you should really earn 193.32. That is, you should earn 193 and almost a third of another point in order to get an A in my class. But I'm going to be nice, and I'm going to not worry about that 32. I'm going to round it down just to flat 193. So our range here is, in order to earn an A, you have to earn at least 193 points, and you can earn up to 216. If you're in that range, you have an A. And I'll go ahead and plug that in down here. 183 to 216. All right, so we've got our first range done. Now we need to do B, C, D, and F. So I'm going to set this up while you're on pause. I'm going to actually go ahead and do it in front of you. That's the point of this, right? So least points for B would be something we need to calculate. That would be the total of 216, that's your total possible, times 0 point, can you guess what it is? You know, it's around 80%, right? But in my class I told you if you get a 79.5 percentage points of the total, then you get a B. So for me it's 0.795. That'll tell us what how many points are equal to 79.5% of the total. All right? That's the least points calculation. And then the total is easy. The total, or let's say the top of points for a B, that one's easy because we look at this 193 because that's the bottom of the A range. So for the B, we know that the bottom of the the top of the B range would be what? 192. So we just subtract 1 from the range that's above, if that makes sense. So I'll even write that out. 193 minus 1 is equal to 192. So the 192 is the bottom of our range. So that we have a ranges that make sense for one thing. All right, so 192 is the high mark. 216 times 0.795 is the low mark, so let's calculate that. All right, so the entirety of 216 times 0.795 is equal to 171.72. Now that is something I should probably round up to 172, right? So we're going to round that up to 172. All right, so we know that the bottom of the B range is 172, which means the top of the C range is 171. All right? So all we need to do to calculate here is the least points for a C, which is 260. So I'm stealing. I'm being lazy now. I'm stealing from my B calculation. It's 216 times 0.695. Let's grab our calculator. 216 total times 0.695. That is, the bottom of a C range is just at the very top of the F range. It's 69.5. If you got that percentage of all the points, you get a C in this class. So that's 150 points So you see this takes a bit of time. Like the professor that chooses to go this direction does have to do a little bit of calculating that takes, you know, a good 5 or 10 minutes. It doesn't take this long normally when you are, you know, if you're not doing it on a video like I'm doing. All right, so we're almost done. We now know that if the bottom of the C range is 150, then the top of the C range, I mean the D range, I'm sorry, is 149. We also know that the bottom, just to look ahead to the F range, we know the bottom of that is 0. Okay? So we're almost done. I think we have one calculation left. Let's see how this works. You'll see what I mean. I've done this enough to know. So the least points for D is also 216 total times 0.595. Let's do that calc. Let's see what we're looking at. Times 0.595 is equal to 128.52 or 129. Okay? So 129 is the bottom of the D range, so we know the top of the F range is 128. That will give us our ranges now. Let me type them out and make sure they make sense here. So A was 193 to 216. B was 172 to 192. C was 150 to 171. D was 129 to 149. And F was 0 to 128. So let's see if this makes sense now. Let me straighten these out and make sure that there's a continuous number story here that makes sense, because it's easy to make a mistake. All right, so A range is 193 to 216. B range is 172 to 192, so that 192 is continuous into the A of 193. C range is 150 to 171, which ties into the B's 172. D range is 129 to 149, which ties into the C's 150 perfectly. And F is 0 to 128, and that ties well. So that makes sense. We were careful to do our calculations properly. I hope this makes sense. I'm sure nobody will watch this video, but it's for that, you know, maybe over a 5-year span, maybe 5 people will watch it. 5 people that needed to watch it so they could understand how the points were calculated, in case there was any doubt. And it's good practice for me just to be transparent on what I'm doing. All right, let me know if you have any questions. If the total range does change, just know that I use the same method to recalculate things across the A, B, C, D, F, percentage ranges. Just as I've done here, it's the same process. You just have to change this number right here. This total number that you're multiplying things by changes to whatever the new total becomes. All right, thanks.